Ijaw national leader and First Republic Federal Commissioner for Information, Chief Edwin Clark, speaks to Friday Aloko about the 2023 general election, demand for Southeast presidency, and related issues. Talking about Southern presidency, which of the South, Southeast, and Southwest zones do you think actually deserves the presidency in 2023? He responded, Nigeria became independent in 1960. In 1957, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa became the Prime Minister of Nigeria. We were practicing the parliamentary system of government then. The only position held by the Igbo was ceremonial president or ceremonial governor general in the person of the late Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. In July 1975, a Yoruba man in the person of Olusegun Obasanjo took over from General Murtala Mohammed, who was killed even though he was very naive and allowed Shehu Musa Yaradua, who was promoted to brigadier or major general at the time as the chief of general staff, to become the de facto head of state of this country. So when Obasanjo handed power to Shehu Shagari, he had done 3 years. Then another Yoruba man, the late Ernest Shonekan, came in for only 2 months. And then Obasanjo was elected president in 1999 and held the position for 8 years. The Inspector General of Police, Musilu Smith, was a Yoruba. When he retired, Tafa Balogun took over. And when Balogun left, Sunday Ehinderu took over. At that time, Colonel Are was the Director General of the DSS. Abdulrahman Ahmed was the Chief of Staff from Kwara. So 8 plus there. Is there not 11 years? So he, Obasanjo, handed over to Yaradua, a northerner, in accordance with the agreement on rotation. Unfortunately, Yaradua died. And that's the reason why we northerners are saying that they couldn't complete their term. Are we God? The man Yaradua died and somebody, Jonathan, was in office. Well, the man in office resigned for a northerner to take over. Have you ever heard of that anywhere in the world, asking an incumbent president to resign for a northerner who wants to complete the tenure of Yaradua? Now, if they are hammering on it, at the time of the 2015 presidential election, the law was very clear that for an incumbent to leave office, he must have completed 2 terms, 2 elections, and not swearing in, not taking oath. As my friend Yakubu was saying, we debunked all that. Well, if there was an amendment to the Constitution which says if you finish the term of a previous government and you can only contest once, then it is a different thing. Now, some northerners are wooing southerners for the 2023 presidential race. For instance, they told the Central Bank of Nigerian Governor Godwin Emefiele to come out and run. They tell people from the south, such as Goodluck Jonathan, to come out and run. Do you think they are really sincere? His response was, they are not sincere because all they want is to divide the South, to use the Southerners to divide the South. That is all they are doing. More Southerners are falling into the trap. I understand. For instance, the Adams Oshomole was supporting Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but I was surprised to see him declaring for presidency, and more of them are declaring. Why do you think that in the ruling All Progressive Congress there are so many people declaring for the presidency race? He responded, their northerners' intent is to use them, southerners, to divide the South. When this argument of the South, you will be surprised that the aspirants will divide themselves. They have their own candidate among them, and they will say, if you don't want to contest, we'll contest, and they will use the army to terrorize people. You have raised fears that if power is not given to the Southeast, for instance, there are going to be problems. What gives you that impression? In 2014, apart from Rocha Sokorocha, who is always a participant in any presidential election, Northerners contested in the newly formed APC, which brought Buhari to power. Buhari was number 1. Rabiu Musa Kankwaso, former governor of Kano State, came second. Atiku Abubakar came third. The late Sam Nda Azaya of Leadership newspaper came fourth. And Tinubu was to be the vice president of Buhari until he said, no, we don't want 2 Muslims to contest together. Then in 2019, 12 Northerners contested the presidential primary in the PDP. They were all screened in my house. Atiku was the first to be screened, followed by Bukola Saraki, and so on. Now, a man like Atiku is now 75 years old. To say in a dishonest way with his people, including Ango Abdullahi, that rotation is dead and buried. Jonathan was gone. The PDP now reversed rotation. What has come to Nigeria now that has made them change their minds and say they want competence? Are there more competent people in the north than in the south? In the 2014 National Conference, you were one of those who canvassed devolution of powers and restructuring. Have you dropped the agitation? He responded, in 2015, Obasanjo set up what he called the National Political Reforms Conference. I was the leader of the South-South as I was in 2014, and we took a position that the constitution should be liberalized, that there should be devolution of powers, that there should be the fiscal restructuring or fiscal federalism. So I didn't start in 2014 when Jonathan was not in power. I remember at that time, President Obasanjo sent a constitution to the conference, but the mode of the conference could not give the courage to the people he sponsored to introduce the matter. That was why the issue of a third term for Obasanjo was not discussed. Otherwise, we discussed devolution of powers and the returning of Nigeria into a true federalism. Let me ask you, when in 2018 Buhari's government set up a committee under Malam Nasir El-Rufai, a competent and intelligent man who is the governor of Kaduna State, with some other governors and past governors and other party leaders, about 19 of them, they produced a paper on restructuring. The report is almost 90% of what is contained in the 2014 Confab report. I have looked at the two and have written an open letter to Mr. President, since he doesn't want to see some of us, that please, if the 2014 National Conference report is unacceptable to you, we Nigerians have agreed to accept El-Rufai and the APC's report, which, according to Chief John Udige Oyegu and El-Rufai himself, has been accepted by APC. APC government, even after many years in power, still blames the PDP and says Jonathan was incompetent. Do you have anything to say about that? He responded, every part of this country has competent people. Competence is not something given to one group of people and for any northerner to claim that they are more competent than the southerners. Then you can imagine what one would say to that. On his view on consensus zoning, direct and indirect primaries, Chief Edwin Clark said, once there is no level playing field, once the government is not responsible for the delegates, once some people can manipulate, there will be no free and fair elections in this country. So consensus or no consensus, the law is very clear now. If you want to contest, all those who bought tickets, they are the ones to contest. They must give approval in writing for consensus to work, and not by one president sitting in his house and manipulating and saying that this is my candidate. No way. That is not democracy.